Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out. I know the Blues are playing tonight. It's a nice day. Baseball, softball practice. The Cards won.
Yeah.
They won?
Yeah, they won.
Yay, Cardinals. Okay.
Tied for first place with the Cubs.
We're going to start off with Sister Jean with our opening prayer.
Hi everybody, welcome this evening. We're a little crew, but we're a big crew. So we're going to just take some deep breaths and kind of get yourself into the room here. Relax a little bit. Many things on your mind. And so we pray. Oh gracious God, you have set us in this garden of life and created us for responsible freedom, joy, and big-hearted love. You've given us the garden of life to tend, to make it life-giving, fruitful, and beautiful. So strengthen our joy and commitment in tending your garden, that we might, in the heat of the day, support one another and obtain the removal of what renders your Bridgeton garden worrisome, life-threatening, and frightening. Gracious God, you know the desire of our hearts. Inspire us to pursue the desire of your heart, that our land may be healthy and we can live our lives free of needless anxiety. Let all who have the power to heal the land be guided by your inspiration. Pour on each of us gathered here and who are working for a just resolution to Westlake your wisdom, courage, and blessing. Again, we gather to find the way forward. In hope and confidence, we ask you to guide us and strengthen us to do what we must. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Sister Jean. At this time, we would like to recognize any elected officials we have with us tonight. If you could just stand and state your name, please.
Here at Bridge, I'm Mayor of Bridgeton. Randy and I, Ward 3, Councilman Bridgeton.
I also want to recognize Dr. Fulton with Capital School District in the back. And Kim Baker with SSM DePaul Health. And our getting to be really good friend Mark Dietrich, who we're seeing quite a bit with St. Louis County Emergency. Are there other clubs or organizations, businesses that would like to be recognized at this time? Okay. I just want to remind everyone of our Facebook pages. If you're looking for information updated to the minute information, you can go to Just Moms STL or to our Westlake Landfill Facebook page. And I'm going to let Megan talk to you for just a minute on a couple of things we have going that might need your attention.
I'm going to start off by asking, did anybody bring any first-time guests? I guess we'll just keep the guest card till next time. Don't forget, we are giving away a $10 guest card for whoever brings the most first-time guests to our meetings. We will pass around the red bucket. I'll start that off after I talk. Your donations are appreciated. They help fund our trips to Jeff City, the signs that we put out, any printing costs, and our Washington trip, which Karen or Dawn will talk about here. Speaking of which, we have gathered some of our personal pictures of our children's rashes, lumps, red, itchy eyes, just the irritation from everything coming out of the landfill. If you want, or if you have any that you want us to add, we will be showing these in Washington. We'd be happy to bring those along if you want us to. And don't forget, we have our memorial trees over there. We have one for autoimmune diseases and one for cancers, and then the corresponding colored ribbons for the awareness colors that symbolizes the diseases. If you would like to fill those out. And then we have our t-shirts. They are $20, and for some of the larger sizes, they're $22. And they're really important because they catch everyone's eye. I keep seeing people stare at me as I go through the grocery stores. I guess that's it.
We also have a Facebook page now, STL Glowing Strong Memorial page. You can vent your frustrations, you can share pictures of your loved ones that you've lost, or talk about your emotions, whatever you want to do, you can talk about that and share with the community or others who may be going through the same thing or similar things that you've gone through too. I want to remind everyone to make sure they're logging the odors on the DNR odor form. It's a new form, it's much easier, it goes a little bit faster, you don't have to deal with that little red thing up there and move it around. Just put in the address and it'll figure it out for you. Dawn's going to talk about why that's so important right now to be filling those out. If you don't have a computer, there's a phone number you can call. If it's after hours, please leave them a detailed message. So I think you may have heard us talk several times about what our goals are for this group and what we want to see happen. I'm going to go ahead and share those goals with you because you're going to hear about them several times throughout the evening. First of all, what we're looking for is a 2-mile voluntary buyout from the fence line property of the landfill for residents. We're also looking at a 3 to 5 mile property assurance plan from the fence line of the landfill property. And last but not least, a safe permanent solution for the radioactive waste. Those are the 3 things that we keep saying over and over and over, and those are the 3 things that we would like for you all to continue to convey those messages to everyone that you talk to. So we've had a couple of meetings, we've had a couple of conference calls. On March 25th, Dawn and I met with Matthew Stanislaus, who is the Assistant Administrator for the Office of Solid Waste and Emergency Response for the EPA. Also on that phone call was Mark Haig. He is the Acting Regional Administrator for Region 7. He's the one that, I guess, is taking Carl Brooks' spot until they find a permanent person. Dawn and I shared our concerns and presented our goals to them on the phone call. And basically what we accomplished on this phone call was, after going a little round and round, is they finally acknowledged that the whole site at the landfill is a Superfund site. And the problem with that is that they want to focus their attention on the fact that the state of Missouri is responsible for the fire and the emissions that come out of the landfill. Our complaint is that the entire thing is a Superfund site. It should fall under Superfund rules, and that is now placing a huge financial burden on the state of Missouri, which should not be allowed to happen because Superfund was designed to keep the taxpayers and the communities and those suffering financially by placing the responsibility on the PRPs. If you haven't heard by now, the moms, Dawn and I, are going to Washington, D.C. on May 6th and 7th. We met with Senator McCaskill on April 2nd. I shared with the Senator our concerns and photos of our sick children. We talked about the financial burden again on the state of Missouri. Dawn discussed our goals and how important it is to get this site turned over to the Army Corps of Engineers. The Senator did commit to advocating to getting a meeting with Administrator McCarthy and also to work closely with the other congressional delegation to get this moving forward. She also assigned a designated person from her Washington office to be our contact person to keep the communications regarding Westlake up to date and current. So we now have access to send emails or call our designated person, and he's going to get a lot of those calls. So this past Tuesday, there was a conference call, a follow-up call from the meeting with Senator McCaskill and with her office, and we did learn that her office is sending a letter out. It was either going out today or tomorrow to Gina McCarthy asking to have a meeting with the moms. So, and for that meeting to take place when we're in Washington on the 6th and 7th. We also have a meeting scheduled with Senator Blunt's office in Washington with his staff on May 6th at 4 p.m. when we're there. So, how many of you have been making calls or emails to Congresswoman Ann Wagner?
Yeah.
She needs to get on the ball.
Yes, you do.
You guys can make that happen. You guys can make those phone calls every single day. I know Robin is tweeting. I am retweeting her tweets every day, 2 and 3 times a day. Keep on her. It takes all of us to do that. It cannot be just Dawn and I, or just the 3 people that are sitting in this front row. It takes all of us. We have to do this. We have to get this information out to Ann Wagner, and she needs to come aboard and help this community. We need bipartisan support. We also have postcards. The postcards that we were sending out to Administrator Gina McCarthy and McCaskill and Blunt's office, we have stopped with those for right now, and we have a new person, and can you guess who it is? It's Ann Wagner, and we need all of you guys to sign those postcards, and let's start sending those to her office. I know some of you that have been sending postcards to Gina McCarthy. Have you gotten responses from Mark Haig? Yeah. Okay, well he's responding, saying that he's responding for Gina and the standard old stuff that they respond with. So I think at this point I'm going to turn it over to Ed Smith with the Missouri Coalition for the Environment. He's going to give a brief history. Are there new people in the audience? Any of you that do not know what's going on? Okay. Well, Ed's going to give a real brief history of the landfill and some bloopers. Bloopers are good.
Hello, everybody. I haven't even done anything yet. My name's Ed Smith. I work for the Missouri Coalition for the Environment. We've been concerned about the radioactive material at the landfill before the EPA's 2008 record of decision to cap it and leave it. We've for a very long time supported the removal of the radioactive wastes, but we're going to talk about a little bit of the history and some of the reasons why we want to see the Army Corps of Engineers put in charge. So this is the McKinley Bridge downtown. This is the area where Mallinckrodt Chemical Works operated in the 1940s, processing uranium for nuclear weapons. All the uranium used in the first self-sustaining nuclear chain reaction was processed down here at the site. Sorry, I know this might be repeat for some folks. Next. This is a modern look at the site. There's still a lot of cleanup happening right here. The Great River. Sorry. I don't know what's going on. The Great River's greenway is actually right here. I've ridden my bicycle up to it. You can see the Shaw trucks doing the remediation there. Next. This is Lambert Field, circa 1947. You can see that this is, it must have the automatic thing on there. This is north. Actually, this is north. So you can see how undeveloped the entire area was. And right here is Coldwater Creek. You can see it flowing. This is north of where my pointer is going. And this tract of land right here is where the Atomic Energy Commission, which came about after the Manhattan Project was finished, allowed Mallinckrodt to move its radioactive materials from downtown to this site. It was out of the way, it was unpopulated, it was a great place to get rid of the radioactive material. Next. This is a closer up view of that. So you can see the end of the airway right here. Again, here's the creek, here's the radioactive material. Here is a car next to drums of radioactive material at the airport site, more drums over here. At some point, they just started taking truckloads of radioactive material and dumping it at the airport site. Next. Another picture just to give you an idea of how much quantity-wise this radioactive material is located at the airport. Next. This is a different look. So here is,
you got it set on
yeah,
timer.
so here's McDonald Boulevard. This is the airport site, the St. Louis airport site. Here's Coldwater Creek running again, so you have some perspective. Next. Wrong way. This is, there used to be ball fields just right on the other side of the radioactive site there. And this is a picture from 1990 where you can see some of the cleanup work had started. You can see the barrels there, here. This is where the ball fields were located. They were contaminated while folks were playing on them. McDonnell Douglas ended up shutting them down after they found out that the site was radioactive. This is the site in 2012. I believe there's only one above ground metal container there holding radioactive liquids. This is the Laddie Avenue site where the radioactive materials were taken from the airport. These are the two piles of radioactive material that, you go back just one. These are the two piles of radioactive material. So what happened is the Atomic Energy Commission sold the radioactive material from the airport to a private company. They moved it to this Laddie Avenue site. It was wet waste. They dried it out so it would be cheaper to ship, and moved it out to Colorado. This is Coldwater Creek as well, and when it floods this area and beyond. Next. This is a more modern day picture of the Laddie Avenue site. Most of the radioactive, if not all of the radioactive materials from this area have been removed by the Corps of Engineers. This is being used, I believe, currently for commercial use. And again, here is the creek. Next. So we're going to get into Westlake Landfill. Why was the Westlake Landfill? Why is it an EPA Superfund site? And all these other sites are being taken care of by the United States Army Corps of Engineers. That's because in 1990, the Department of Energy was responsible for the formerly utilized Sites Remedial Action Program, a big fancy name for a program meant to clean up nuclear weapons-related radioactive wastes. They came to St. Louis after a very in-depth multi-part series from the Post-Dispatch about St. Louis's radioactive legacy in 1989. The Department of Energy came in and listed which sites qualified as FUSRAP. And in this 1990 document, Federal Facilities Agreement, and they included vicinity properties. At every site where the radioactive waste were stored, it moved off-site. So they included vicinity properties in what qualified as cleanup. Except vicinity properties do not include the Westlake Landfill. The Westlake Landfill was explicitly carved out from becoming a FUSRAP site, come to find out because the Department of Energy did not want to spend the money that it would take to clean up the site. So 2 months later, in the summer of 1990, it became a Superfund site under the Environmental Protection Agency. And We've estimated that there are roughly 2,385 truckloads of soil and radioactive materials that were moved from Lanny Avenue and dumped at the Westlake landfill. Next. The unique thing about the radioactive material in St. Louis is that it went through processing that meant that certain radioactive isotopes were not in equilibrium, and this is the thorium-230 radium-226 differential, essentially. So I'm speaking a little bit in platitudes here. I've got my degree in political science, not chemistry, but you can see this is the ingrowth of the radium over time. So it's going to become up to 100 times more radioactive over the next 9,000 years. That's a very long time. Some people don't think our planet's that old. This stuff is going to keep getting more radioactive over time. Next. This is a map of the Westlake landfill, and it shows how it's broken up into different units. Operable Unit 1 is broken up into 2 areas, here and here. Operable Unit 2 is basically everything else. The EPA, under Superfund, is responsible for Operable Unit 1. The Department of Natural Resources is responsible for Operable Unit 2. The smoldering fire is down here in the South Quarry. Here's the neck of the landfill. Here's the North Quarry. And here is OU1, Area 1, where some of the radioactive wastes were discarded, dumped, what have you, in 1973. Next. And so EPA Region 7, as many folks here know, have had some issues when it comes to fully characterizing the site, trying to understand what's going on at the site. So one of the problems that we have discovered is that EPA Region 7 in its 2008 decision to leave the radioactive wastes never considered a fire, surface fire, smoldering fire, any fire, a risk to the radioactive material moving off-site and therefore a risk to the people around the landfill. Next. So in 1995, the EPA received this remedial investigation and feasibility study work plan from the contractor for Operable Unit 2, the non-EPA site. Received April 18th, 1995, Superfund Branch Region 7. It's right there. They received this document, okay? Next. And it discusses how there was a landfill fire in Operable Unit 2. An investigation into the extent of a landfill fire in the Quarry Central Pit, former Black Diamond Lake location, was also conducted in 1994. Infrared thermography identified a subsurface landfill fire adjacent to the north wall of the central pit. A concrete slurry was injected in the landfill cover and over the landfill fire to suffocate the fire. So the EPA knew about this in 1995, yet by the time their record of decision came up in 2008, they did not consider a fire threat to the radioactive waste. Next. So again, here's the South Quarry, right here, neck of the landfill. This map, other than all this extra stuff going on here, it was provided by the Department of Natural Resources. Here's the 1992 fire, so it was actually closer to the radioactive materials than the ongoing smoldering fire is now. Next. How do we know that EPA didn't consider fire a threat to the radioactive waste other than it's not mentioned in any of their documents? They admitted it. No landfill fire or subsurface oxidation event was identified during the remedial investigation, feasibility study, or proposed plan phases of work on Operable Unit 1. And the EPA is currently reconsidering its 2008 decision, as many of you know. But that was not due to the fact it didn't consider a smoldering fire. We're actually somewhat lucky that the EPA's process has been reopened. It was due to the fact that they did not give the community enough information about what its proposed plans were. The EPA discussed amongst themselves about partial excavation of radioactive materials. They never let the public know that that was an option that they were considering. And after a letter was sent by Great Rivers Environmental Law Center, which operates in downtown St. Louis, where they help us out a lot on environmental issues, the EPA decided to put that 2008 decision on hold and take a second look at the Westlake landfill. This happened in the same year that the smoldering fire started in 2010, but we didn't find out about it until 2012. Next. Just another picture of the landfill. Next. I just wanted, this is, I thought there were going to be some new folks here tonight. I just wanted to throw this one in for some perspective. This is what the Missouri River, I don't want to say normally looks like because it was originally a flat, slow river. This was years of dams and levees and wing dikes turned the Missouri River into this very narrow, kind of spaghetti noodle looking thing you got right here. This is the flood of '93, as many of you may remember. The one spot right here that didn't flood, the Riverport and Earth City levee was remained intact during that flood. And the Westlake landfill is right about here within the floodplain. One thing to consider is that right here is Chesterfield Valley, which was completely underwater. That Monarch levee was rebuilt bigger and better than ever. So our concern is moving forward, if there's another 1993 type flood, it'll be pushing that water downstream instead of flooding the Chesterfield Valley and moving towards the landfill. Next. So what can you do? There are a few more EPA kind of mess-ups I'd like to touch on real quick. First, their former project manager, Dan Gravatt, there's been a lot of house cleaning in EPA Region 7, and it's kind of our understanding that a lot of it's related to the mishandling of the Westlake landfill. And that includes the former project manager telling the Bridgeton City Council in 2012, I believe it was, or 2013, that the 8,700 tons of bleach barium sulfate, what EPA focuses on as the radioactive material, was mixed with clean fill dirt, about 40,000 tons, when in fact the dirt was excavated from Laddie Avenue with that 8,700 tons of bleach barium sulfate and dumped in the Westlake landfill. So it was not clean fill, it was radioactive. The dirt underneath of that still had to be excavated from Laddie Avenue by the Corps of Engineers. And the other thing that's rather frustrating that I didn't include here is that the Nuclear Regulatory Commission handled the Westlake landfill before the EPA took it over. And the NRC requested a status update about what's happening in the landfill. And in 2001, 5 years before the EPA let the public know what its proposed plan was, that it ultimately decided was a good idea to captivate the radioactive waste in 2008, they sent a memo to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission in 2001 that said that their plan for the Westlake landfill was to captivate the radioactive wastes. It took them 5 years to get that information to the public, which is unsatisfactory in our opinion. So what can you do? We need to get this site transferred. Our organization, as I said, supports the removal of the radioactive wastes. You do not have to support the removal of the radioactive wastes to support a second opinion at the Westlake landfill. Next. And that's exactly what we want to see. All of the radioactive sites related to nuclear weapons in St. Louis that have ongoing remediation taking place are under the Corps of Engineers. Congress moved authority for FUSRAP from the Department of Energy to the Corps of Engineers in 1997. And what are the perks other than a much needed second opinion from a very qualified group of folks? Is that it removes a significant amount of influence from the process from the responsible parties. For example, the Corps of Engineers, they commission their own site study and investigations into the risks, the science, so on and so forth. And if they don't think that they can do that, they hire their own contractors, and those contractors are accountable to the Corps of Engineers. With Superfund, the financially responsible parties hire the contractor. The contractor is directly responsible to the person that hired them, not the Environmental Protection Agency. So it adds a layer of frustration, I think, for a lot of folks that is not necessarily needed, especially when the contractor is going to be doing what the company's asking them for. So also post-decision legal challenges. It's our understanding that the FUSRAP, their say is final, essentially. That with EPA Superfunds, the responsible parties can sue if they believe that the cost of remediation is too much, for example. And then they can tie it up in court for a very long time, and we're not going to have a remedy implemented. As I said, the Corps is already working on all the other radioactive sites. The Westlake Landfill is the only radioactive site in EPA Region 7's jurisdiction where they are the lead on a Superfund site where there's radioactive materials. There's not a single other site in Kansas, Nebraska, Iowa, or Missouri, or tribal nations where the EPA is the lead on a radioactive site. And the Corps, this is another benefit, because a lot of support from Pattonville School District, the firefighters, DePaul Hospital, North County Incorporated, these big local institutions, they support the Corps of Engineers. And we saw a letter from Senator McCaskill, Senator Blunt, Congressman Clay, and Congresswoman Wagner 2 times last year to EPA Region 7, asking them to involve the Corps of Engineers because we have faith in them. Don't really have, I think Reagan actually said it best, trust and verify. That's what we try to do. We trust the Corps a little bit more, but we will verify if they're put in charge. The Corps is already involved. They are reviewing, they're providing independent technical reviews of the EPA's forthcoming Record of Decision amendment. They are already familiar with the site. They will be able to hit the ground running if they are legally put in charge of the decision making at the Westlake Landfill, and that is a benefit that has already come from people supporting the Corps of Engineers involvement. Another really positive thing that's come from the Corps is that if the EPA had its way, they would be digging into radioactive material for the isolation barrier. It was this time last year, maybe a little over a year ago, the EPA said that by summer 2014, they were going to be digging an isolation barrier. The Corps became involved, said this is incredibly technical, you need to plan this out thoroughly, and the Corps said 14 to 18 months. What? That one over here?
Yeah.
Oh, so there's an isolation barrier, right, that the Attorney General sued Republic Services, and to put some sort of barrier between the smoldering fire and the radioactive material. There were tests done to find out if that barrier was radioactive free. It is not. The EPA found radioactive material where they previously had not identified it. I think it's our concern and verified that the EPA could have been digging in areas of radioactive material without knowing it. Next. Former Administrator Brooks, said in an opinion editorial to the Post-Dispatch that even if FUSRAP were put in charge, any Corps site cleanup would have to follow some Superfund rules that the EPA is following now. Operative word there is some, and we've just discussed the benefits of the Corps of Engineers. Next. These guys can help us put the Corps of Engineers in charge. Democrats and Republicans alike have pushed for sites in their districts to become FUSRAP. It's happened on a bipartisan level before, and it can happen again. Next. I believe this is Dawn's turn. Thank you for your time.
Okay. To go back real quick, for those of you that don't know, you have a Superfund site here that's both on fire and has radioactive waste. Okay? EPA controls Superfund. All the radioactive waste in St. Louis and throughout Missouri and in all the other Region 7 locations, anything that has radioactive waste has been handled by the Corps of Engineers. So again, what we're asking is that FUSRAP be in charge. That's something that absolutely has to happen. And the reason is because until then, you're not going to ever get an independent opinion. Now, I'm going to go, before I get on this, do we have any Sanium residents in here? Because really quickly, okay, I had a phone call this morning about the leachate line. There were people at I-70 and the Rock Road that were complaining of the smell. The power went out at the lift station down here off the Baker Road, and apparently the lift station, which carries the leachate all the way 7.5 miles down the Rock Road, it sat in there and it sat stagnant, and so people were smelling it 5 far away. So it's very important that, back to the odor form like Karen said, even if you're not sure what you're smelling, please just report it and let DNR and everybody else figure out where it's coming from. I think a lot of people, when they smell an odor, they're like, I don't know if that's the landfill. Let them investigate it. If you smell it, you're not supposed to be smelling anything. So just think of it that way. Somebody needs to know about it. In addition to the odor, so when you guys, I don't know how many of you have encountered it, if there's any new people, in this odor, there are emissions coming out of it. This is a March 16th letter from the Department of Natural Resources. And at the bottom of it, it says, in addition to information obtained at meetings and observations of the landfill property, it goes on to demonstrate that the landfill continues to experience a subsurface fire due to the ongoing nature and intensifying conditions. So I want, where's the pointer? Intensifying conditions. Guys, this was just March 16th. This is not getting better, it's getting worse, okay? And you have it right there from the Department of Natural Resources. On letterhead, sent to Mr. Brian Power, environmental manager at Bridgeton Landfill. So that's a myth. You'll see emails coming out from Republic saying, oh, we've got this from here, it's under control. No, it's not. Right there, intensifying conditions at the landfill. The department is formally documenting with this notice of violation letter these events and other related violations. Yeah, that is because of your reporting, okay? Every time you report this odor, it goes to these people up here, goes to the good guys, and they say, where's that odor coming from? They send somebody out to investigate it. So you have to report. Next. Sulfur dioxide emissions. How many of you guys, if you go past the landfill at night, have you guys seen the flares with the fire at the top of them? Those are burning off chemicals. That big plastic green thing that you see on top of that landfill, it's actually acting like a plastic blanket and it's catching the chemicals and they're being diverted to these flares and they're being burned off. The problem is that they're not all being burned off. So those that aren't, specifically the sulfur dioxide emissions, are being launched out of this sucker. It's like a big springboard. Here, again, proof that this is getting worse, not better. In 2013, 3.46 tons per year was coming out of the landfill of sulfur dioxide. 2014, it was up 50. This year, 2015, it's over 250 tons per year. They don't even have a calculation right now, but it's a couple of handheld calculations that are floating around as to just how much over 250. That, to give you an idea, that's a lot, you guys. They're in major violation of air laws for this. It says here they updated its calculations of sulfur dioxide emissions from Bridgeton candlestick flares and has determined the combined emissions from these flares exceed 250 tons per year. You're going to have to ask yourself what it's going to look like next year. Again, we need people to be more involved, not less. Next. Republic's landfill doesn't stink. This is actually an email that will come out. How many of you guys, does anybody get Republic's emails? You have to sign up. Ed does. Robin does. I want you to read this. April 10th, approximately 95% of these observations have detected no odor because they investigated themselves. Imagine that. They're not finding that their landfill stinks. To date, less than 2%, come on guys, less than 2% of these observations have documented odors that are believed to be attributable to the landfill. Come on. Now, I bounced this off the Department of Natural Resources because obviously I was pretty upset when Ed sent this to me, and they're shaking their head. They're saying, no way, guys. No way. They know better. So again, if you don't report the odor, then you're going to rely on them to report it, and look what it looks like when they do it. Okay? So that's the bottom line there. Next. DNR AG notice of violation letter to Republic Services key points. Missouri solid waste laws. The subsurface fire has created conditions that have and continue to damage the environmental control systems, infrastructure at the landfill, including the leachate collection system and the gas collection system, allowing for uncontrolled emissions. including odor from the facility. Comes down here, burning of solid waste violates Missouri Air Conservation Commission. Amount and duration of settlement indicates a significant amount of waste has been and continues to be consumed by the subsurface fire. Lateral migration of landfill gas continues. If there are any business odors next to the landfill, lateral migration of landfill gas. Okay, that's happening off-site, not on. It's leaving the site under the ground. This is how you can follow us on Twitter. Real quick, to bounce off of that, we just came back from an event, a fundraiser with State Representative Bill Addo over in St. Charles, where Attorney General Koster was there. Raise your hand if you came with us. It was quite a nice group of people, and I gotta tell you, he hit the ground running when he came in the door. He started, first thing he said was he talked about Bridgeton, and he said that this is getting worse. It's not getting better, and he mentioned Republic Services. He, for the first time, mentioned that it is not humanly possible to put this fire out. And then he went on to say, use the word negligent. He said, they are trying to hold this company accountable for its negligent behavior, which they feel has allowed and continues to allow this fire to move and cause health effects. And that was added in there. That's the third thing he said that we've never heard out of anyone else's mouth except for Dr. Khan. He acknowledged that we are seeing health effects here around the landfill, and not just odor related. He suggested cancers and other things. What's happening to this community, and now communities, because the leachate line goes into St. Anne, you've got Hazelwood, is completely unfair. And it should not be tolerated by any elected official in this state. You have a company over here that makes billions a year profit that is partially owned by Bill Gates. At this site, because it's a Superfund site, you have 3 people responsible. So you have Republic Services and you have Exelon, which is doing very, very well. And last but not least, you have your own federal Department of Energy. To some extent, we won the worst lottery possible by having a fire next to radioactive waste. But in some ways, the one way we luck out is we have 3 very well-off, viable companies who can afford to pay for it and fix it. Okay? That can be done without them batting an eyelash, without it hurting their bottom dollar. These meetings that we hold here, we're going to be doing them once a month. It's election year, you guys know that. These elected officials that are running for office in this district, it doesn't matter what they are, Democrat or Republican, this issue, if they are from this area and in this district, this needs to be one of their issues. And you need to make that happen. We have people who are volunteering, and we're asking for more volunteers to watch campaigns. We need to meet with these people. We always do it respectfully. If someone's running for office, we always approach them and say, hey, come to one of these meetings. Sit in the back. Learn what's happening in our community. Learn how you can help support your community members. That's what we need to do. These elected officials like Attorney General Koster, it's great what he said tonight. If he wants to be your next governor, you need to hold him accountable. When he's in public, you need to be there and you need to say thank you. We live next to the Bridgeton landfill. It's hurting our community. Give him your story and ask what he's doing. You need to do that with your state reps. You need to do that with this is Senator Chappelle Nadal's district. This is Lacey Clay's part of the landfill. The other half is Ann Wagner. That is the only way we're going to see movement. And that is going forward what our strategy is going to be. We have Claire McCaskill who committed to several things with us. Now it's important that we hold her accountable. She committed, she needs to follow through. We need Ann Wagner and Roy Blunt's support. We need them to help push on their end. I want to go through real quick and say that this Sunday, there's actually a fundraiser right here in this, not a fundraiser, but an event right here in this room for the Gateway Democrats.
You're gonna have a lot of people. Lacey Clay is gonna be in this room. He's the keynote speaker. You guys need to have people here, okay? You need to meet with them, shake his hand. He needs to see faces. We always do it respectfully. We're never ignorant, we're never rude, but that is the only way you're gonna get this thing moved to the Army Corps of Engineers. And it has to go, guys. That's the only way this problem gets any better. For Bridgeton, for Maryland, this is a Maryland Heights issue. Thank you.
So Don just told you about the event on Sunday. I want to remind everyone that our next community meeting will be May 21st. There's no date set yet for a CAG meeting that I'm aware of, Community Advisory Group meeting. We sent an email to Dr. Khan asking him for an update and where the health survey stands and how soon we can expect to see that. We need you guys talking to your neighbors, telling them that it's coming out. Everyone needs to fill it out and participate in that as well. I think that's about all we have. We're going to open it for question and answer period. Mike?
We don't know.
We're waiting for an update.
What did you say?
He was asking if they were still going to do the phone survey or how they were going to handle that, and we're asking ourselves for an update from Dr. Khan. So.
I just have a question on that farm letter. I'm sure everybody gets. I meant to bring it tonight, but I just don't understand it. It keeps saying that the super fund can't be transferred to the Corps of Engineer, but thank you for your concern. I mean, does everybody has received that farm letter, I'm sure. I can't remember who it's from. It's probably from one of the...
Then we're not pushing hard enough.
Huh?
Then we're not pushing hard enough.
But do you know what farm letter I'm talking about?
Yeah. Yeah, I think everyone's...
saying that, well, you keep asking this question, but it's going to be cleaned up the same, and by law, it can't be transferred.
It's not going to be cleaned up the same
I'm
because...
just telling you this.
Yeah, no, the form letters that you're receiving in response to the postcards you're sending out, at first they say that this can't be transferred to FUSRAT from Superfund. Yes, it can. We're going to Washington, D.C. to ask Gina McCarthy to do it. It absolutely can.
Well, that's what I'm asking. Is that what the trip to
Yeah.
Washington is going to try to get the law changed so it can be transferred?
Well, the law doesn't have to be changed. It's a simple add-in. It can be done. You can call it an earmark or whatever they want to call it. This is just a matter of two senators getting together and writing a sentence. I mean, that is what will make the difference in the lives of these people at the landfill. It's literally that simple. Okay, appropriation-wise, this isn't going to cost taxpayers. We already pay taxes to the FUSRAT program, to the Army Corps of Engineers to clean up this waste. What happens is the Army Corps in Washington looks at all the sites across the country and they appropriate based on which sites are the most critical. Okay, so that's a myth going around that's going to cost the taxpayers. No, it's not. No, it's not. But I will tell you this. All that work that was just done in the pipeline, that's costing you guys because MSD has control of this leachate line. They accepted control of it. And now you guys are paying for it with your taxes. So the repair work that I just mentioned, when the power went out and all that stuff?
Well, they're looking for a 50% raise anyway.
They absolutely are.
All the wastewater. They want to get a 50% raise.
They make $22,000 a day off of this.
I want a 10% raise.
Well, yeah. I
don't get that.
But that's where, again, everybody's taking a little chunk. What's happening right now is Republic's taking a little chunk and handing it over to MSD and being real quiet about it. Regardless of the politics, we shouldn't have to pay for a dime of this, okay? This is not our fault this is happening in our community. One of the things we're asking for, if you have a business or you know anyone that owns a business, we are asking for property assurance. What that means is your property is guaranteed at a certain price so that if anything happens or continues to happen as we're seeing with this landfill and your property drops, it's still guaranteed. We need that tax revenue to stay up there because otherwise all of our communities take a hit and that's unfair. We're trying to build our communities, okay? This monster, this green monster as some people call it, is taking a heck of a toll. On not only that, but St. Louis County. Your St. Louis County Health Department is going to do a health survey to figure out how you're all doing. They know how you're doing, okay? They can see what's coming out of the landfill and guess that it's not really well. Who's paying for that? This is draining this whole area, and there's no reason for it. There's no reason. You have got companies that have incredibly deep pockets. Superfund was created so that they can make these companies clean up their mess and not impact and hurt the communities. That's the whole purpose. So my response to your form letter that you received, I would call them back and say, why is my St. Louis County Department of Health having to do a health survey on the people living around your Superfund site? That would be my response.
Yeah, they didn't leave me a phone number.
Yeah, I'm sure. Anybody? Chuck?
Yeah, Doctor, while you're in Washington, is it possible, it's very convenient, EPA and always wants to change the air, what's coming out of the air over to the Department of Natural Resources. While EPA is causing a problem on the news this week over coal, this is way worse than coal. When you have that meeting, try to discuss and get them to where they can't keep conveniently switching that over and have EPA under the Clean Air Act take this over and look at it.
Yeah, you know what, here's the deal, even if they fix the flare system and it becomes 90% efficient, according to these documents they sent out, it's still not gonna be good enough, you guys. You are still living next to, this is not a landfill on fire. This is a Superfund site. It is a Superfund site because of all the illegal chemicals that were dumped there. Okay, so keep that in mind. You're not talking about stuff in your kitchen on fire. Talking about paint, petroleum. We have a list of things that were dumped in this landfill. McDonnell Douglas dumped in this landfill, you guys. This was the Sojay. This was, you saw the pictures that Ed showed. Back then, there was nothing out here. When you had something you wanted to get rid of, you dumped it in this landfill. We worked very hard going over these documents and speaking with DNR and asking them, what are you, besides just what I showed you coming out of the flares, there's a lot of other stuff. You have dioxin coming out of this landfill, you guys. And it's going to burn for the next 7 to 10 years. That's the estimate. I ask every week, how long do you expect it to burn? And they say it's still the same. So this community will have to deal with this for the next 7 to 10 years. We have got to come together and make sure this is taken care of. This is ridiculous.
And how are they going to take care of that? They're going to say, what do we have to win for them to admit? They're not even admitting that an odor is coming from it. I mean, how do you get them to admit that?
Well, your Attorney General is suing them. So that is a big, and listen, he's not just suing them, you guys, he's going to trial. This is going to go in front of a jury in St. Louis County.
So this will come out with the Attorney General that there is stuff coming from the flares. It already
has. That document right there.
I mean, that'll be brought up in the...
Oh yeah, I mean, they're going to be fined for it. But here's where you guys come in. This lawsuit is on behalf of the state of Missouri. You guys are the state of Missouri, okay? You guys need to be thinking about what this community needs. What is it that you want as residents? You know, those of you that live in Spanish Village in the trailer park, we're asking that you be voluntarily allowed to move. It's not an evacuation. What it means is if you want to go, you're allowed to go. And that house, Republic will own that house, and they can do whatever they want with it when the fire's out. It's still usable property. But the property assurance plan, that is really important for a lot of you that maybe don't live next to the landfill, but live down from it. That's important to the businesses in your area. It's important to your school district, your fire department. You know, Bridgeton's building a new community center here. It's really sad, marketing-wise, to say that, you know, St. Anne is working on a gorgeous new community center, you know, and, Maryland Heights is too. That the improvements that are being made in these communities are really exciting. This should be a place where people want to come and raise their kids.
Well, that's why they want us to shut up.
It is.
I can tell you how many people I talk to and they say, please, Go away. It's in
I
the
know.
news. We hear it. I don't want to hear it anymore.
Well,
You're
they're gonna
ruining
hear it for
St.
the
Anne,
next-
you're ruining Hazelwood. I've been told this by numerous people. I try to be vocal. I'm trying to be
I know.
optimistic, but I get pessimistic about it.
Well, I
Because
would encourage you
don't
not to, because they're hearing this loud and clear, and as far as people not wanting to deal with it, my response, believe it or not, they tend to be loud, but I haven't really seen too much of it on my end. There's a few people, but you have a regime change in Bridgeton, and I can't help but think that's gonna make a huge difference.
We need Maryland Heights, and
We
all
do.
I've seen for the past 2 years is like 10 mothers from Maryland Heights. I mean, Dawn, as enthusiastic as you are, why, Maryland Heights is our neighbor, my church is right there. Where are all the people from
They're
Maryland Heights?
watching on
They're
Facebook.
smelling this like us, why aren't they here? And I'm not saying you
Yeah.
know the answer,
And Maryland Heights is watching the mayor of Bridgeton.
I'm just talking.
Maryland, I know, you're very worked up, but you're allowed to be.
No, I'm
You
just
live right
talking
there.
rhetorical. I just can't imagine Maryland Heights is such a family of small children. It's a community with more small children than Bridgeton. Bridgeton has a lot of elderly people like me who have their kids are grown. I'm not saying there isn't small children in Bridgeton.
Right.
But Maryland Heights, I just think there should be mothers in uproar about their,
Well, they are, but they're on uproar on the page. Let me tell you, when Lois Gibbs did this
They're
at
just
Love
lying.
Canal, you guys, there was no social media. Social media can make people very lazy. So can email. You know, how many of you guys have, in the recent months, have actually called a representative? A lot of people email them. You know, when you're on social media, you can post, you can complain, you can tweet out, but that does nothing for showing up in person. We're taping this right now. This will be all over the internet. We get so many people view it. We have moms in Maryland Heights that say, oh, it's great, we're going to watch your video. In some respects, it's our fault this room isn't filled because we're doing such a good job getting it out that they can sit back tomorrow and watch this and get
oh,
what they
I'm
need.
not blaming you.
But no,
I just was thinking that people should be more in an uproar to come to meetings.
Bridgeton, nobody wants to step on Bridgeton's toes. You have a new mayor now, and he was listen, we had the mayor of Bridgeton at the meeting tonight. That was huge. That was a really big. You got a representative from St. Anne at the meeting tonight. You know, this thing is moving. It may seem like it's moving slow, but honestly, it's getting kicked up a notch. You had a question.
Well, I've put a considerable amount of effort into reforming my language as operationally as possible, so I would just like to relate a brief direct experience that I had.
Can you scoot forward just a little so they can actually...
Yes. I am a state licensed operator, water systems operator. So my licenses come through Department of Natural Resources and the EPA. That's as far as the chain of command that entails. That's who I answer to. So I've known about this since, I guess, 2009 or 10. I've only been licensed for the past year and a half, and I'll admit, like, I was pretty afraid to speak out on this for fear of whatever repercussions. Maybe those are real, maybe they weren't. I just didn't know, but I raised this issue with the manager at the company that I presently work for, and we operate the public water sewer district for St. Charles County, and that water is mainly bought from Missouri American Water at the Howard Bend plant in Chesterfield Valley, and they bore a giant hole underneath the ground to transfer this water over to the Dana Boone plant. So that's where the water comes from that they're making a lot of money from. Rob Fisher's a really outstanding guy, and he's very passionate about the work that he does, and he was on site at Westlake doing survey work. Rob Fisher is the manager of the district of Alliance. And he seemed like the person that, because I wanted to raise these concerns that I had as far as like calling the EP, Carl Brooks, or sending emails to the DNR office. And he reminded me that while I have a title and a responsibility in my community, I'm a free individual. landfill, I'm an American citizen, I have rights to speak up, and that if there are concerns that I have, that I should raise them to whom they need to be raised. And what he said that after his experience with the landfill, he went to a corporate in Colombia and raised the issue, and why they don't take a stance, why you've probably never heard that company's name in relation with this issue, is because they buy the water from Missouri American Water, which comes from the Howard Bend plant, which is downstream of Westlake Landfill. They acknowledge the fact that our river system interconnects our entire city, both sides of the river. This west side of the river, east side of the river is an illusion. It's a boundary that doesn't exist because there is a river there and it moves water and it moves life through this entire community. So, in that respect, they don't have a vested financial interest in it. And can I get mad at Rob for that? No, because he's not the company, he's not the name, and he's not the person that has a vested financial interest in those deep pockets. And I kind of had to take a step back and humble myself a little bit, because while he was very understanding and answered my questions as best as he could, there was nothing that in his position with that time, that he could do except for just listen to me. And that's what I think we need, is to talk with people and to listen to them and to hear their stories. And I appreciate you sharing your story here with me.
Thank you for getting that. The SDL Memorial page, that's one of the main points of that page, is for stories like yours. It's not just people who have lost. It's what are you going through with this? The Facebook page that we have, Westlake Landfill, we're using, while we don't mind that, we certainly encourage anybody to post, but we post a lot of facts on there, and people felt like there just wasn't a place to tell that story. You know what I'm saying? And so they asked us to do that, and that's why we did it. Does anybody else have any questions? All right, well, thank you guys. We're around afterwards. There's plenty that you can do to get involved if you want to pull one of us aside afterwards and talk with us. Twitter, writing letters, and, sign the postcards that are in the back on the table. Thank you.